Hi, I'm Chris Ketzley, Executive Director here at the Association of Towns. Talk of the Towns podcast is a production of the New York State Association of Towns and strives to bring the voices from across New York to talk about all things towns. If you're interested in participating as a guest, please email us at info@nytowns.org. The views and opinions expressed by podcast guests are of their own and do not necessarily reflect the views, positions, or policies of the New York State Association of Towns. Good afternoon. Welcome back to another edition of Talk of the Towns, where we talk about all things important to our towns. And today we're going to bring our Deputy Director and Legislative Director, Sarah Brancatella, into the conversation to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of this legislative session that we just got done with. And so we're going to bring Sarah in a moment. But before we do that, I want to remind you to please make sure, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, make sure you hit share, like, and subscribe. Share, like, and subscribe. The more you do that, the better it is for us to get the message out and share our talks and our message with folks about things that are important to New York towns. So thank you for being here. And this is a frequent guest, at least twice now or so.
I think so, but I think it's been a little bit.
It's been a little bit. Yeah. We've had a long line of folks. Well, you've been busy working on legislative stuff, so now you're able to come in and talk about it.
And your podcast is very popular. I think people are lining up around the door to be on it.
To get on it, yeah. So I would say thank you for being here, but this is, you're off where you work. So.
Well, thanks for having me down the hall.
Down the hall, traveled far. So let's start with, I mentioned the good, the bad, the ugly. What got done that A, was good, and then maybe what got done that might not be so great for folks?
Well, I think this legislative session was really unique compared to ones in recent memory. It is the latest budget in 16 years, and that really left a small amount of time to do anything outside of the budget. So there's a lot of news articles. I'm not the only one saying this. There's a lot of legislators who feel like the end of session was extremely rushed, and the budget is really where most things got done. So there's not as many standalone bills to talk about, but I will say NYS definitely had some successes in the budget, both in terms of funding and legislation.
Let's start with the good news. What did we achieve that, particularly in the funding area, I think our members would be interested in?
Yeah, so we successfully advocated for a total of approximately $200 million increase in local funding. So there was a $100 million, I can't do math, $150 million. So there was a $100 million increase in temporary municipal assistance over last year for a total of $150 million. And then CHIPS was also increased by $50 million. And the increase in the CHIPS base is really important because that's a statutory program. We'd much prefer seeing that compared to something like the Pave Our Potholes program or Bridge New York, Pave New York. As much as we love those, we think that they're fantastic. Having a statutory dedicated fund like CHIPS be increased is always our first priority. So we were very happy with that.
So in the AIM line, the increase came mostly in the temporary piece?
Yeah, sure did. So AIM as a base stayed flat. The temporary municipal assistance, which, as you know, was supposed to be a 1-year program, then became a 2-year program, now is in its 3rd year, that was increased by $100 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you see also got done in the budget that NYS might have advocated for?
Well, we had a lot of success with seeker reform. In the executive budget, there was a proposal to streamline seeker in certain ways. It actually doesn't even make these projects type 2. It exempts them from the process entirely. And we had discussed and had advocated really heavily for some changes. We weren't opposed to seeker reform generally. There's a lot of red tape in there. There's a lot of improvements that can be made. But with this specific proposal, we wanted a few different things. Number one, we wanted a municipality to have the authority to extend any sort of deadlines that would be imposed on them. So in the original version and in the, I believe it wasn't in the Senate, it was in the Senate version, it wasn't clear that a municipality could extend this 2-year deadline for an EIS publication. And in the final version that got adopted, it is clear that a municipality can extend that deadline under certain circumstances. For example, if a developer does not provide or an applicant doesn't provide information that a municipality requests, if they're acting in bad faith. And in those circumstances, there are some qualifications. It has to be in writing, all of that, but a municipality does have the authority to extend that. So that was a big success. We were very happy about that. Also, really important, there is an express preservation of a municipality's right to have other forms of review. So you and I have talked about this frequently, not on the podcast, but, other times when I come down the hall, how a lot of municipalities rely on seeker for things like traffic studies. This bill,
lighting.
yeah, a bunch of other things. So this bill specifically preserves a municipality's authority to do that outside of the seeker process, which is huge. We think that was always the intention. Our understanding was that was always the intention in the executive budget. But to have that expressly spelled out was really good to see, because I'm not saying that applicants wouldn't exploit that, but there's definitely a possibility that they would. So we were happy to see that preservation.
And I have to say, I think NYS was almost exclusively the single voice on this, pushing this, just about really only ones with these deep concerns. And when someone first took a look at the proposal, at first blush, the default was like, oh yeah, this is going to cut red tape, this is going to make things easier. But you dove in, you kind of saw the nuances, and I think it makes a big difference for our members.
Oh, I definitely agree. And I think that we have some exciting ideas on how we can further expedite or help the seeker process along. I know one of your previous guests, Andy Brick, had talked about having a seeker officer. And that you've had conversations with legislators. That seems to be something that is going to gain traction, or people are interested in.
They seem very interested in it. The issue I always had with the seeker reform in the beginning was it felt like, and I can't quite put my finger on this, but it felt like developers were kind of whispering in folks' ears that local governments are. So I've been on the other side, as you know, of this. I've seen the developers come in and, God bless you, there's great developers out there, no question about it. But a lot of them don't want to answer questions or hold up the whole process with doing the work to figure out what's best for the community. And so a lot of times they'll try to get around answering the questions. I think that they want to try to weaken the seeker process, so that municipalities don't have the teeth to enforce. And I think it was important that we protected that. So we got the efficiencies while protecting the enforcement.
Yep. And one really important point too is, while these reforms do include some deadlines, which again, we were successful at advocating for an extension, there's nothing in the legislation that says it is a default neg deck or it is a default approval or anything like that. So, get the extension, get it in writing, but also municipalities can go forth knowing that if it's not met, it's not going to automatically result in this exemption from the seeker process or a negative declaration where one isn't warranted.
That's important. And yeah, we're still talking budget. You wouldn't think seeker reform got done in a budget, but it did. So what else in there is good for NYOP members?
That is good for NYOP members.
We might have to move to the ugly in a moment here.
Well, there were some clarifications. I would say there is a veterans tax exemption that was previously, that is an interesting legislative background. It was optional, then it moved to mandatory. Now it's back to optional as part of the budget. There are some different guardrails for who qualifies for that. So getting that back to a local option rather than mandatory is helpful. There is still funding for things like clean water infrastructure grants, animal shelters, a whole bunch of several small pots of funding that were maintained, which is good for our members, right? And I know that we are going to prioritize making sure that our members know about the availability of these grants and applying for them. So
I know one or two members brought up the cemetery one.
Yeah.
That's an important one.
Yeah, that is an important one.
So what would you say what didn't get done in this session that was really important to get done?
Okay, yeah, I guess I can talk about
How much time do
what
we
didn't
have?
get done. As I mentioned before, it was a really condensed time period. OPEB, other post-employment benefits. I know you can talk about that for at least 45 minutes.
We did a podcast on Solo. In case you didn't see it, go back and watch it. It's very interesting.
I call it your OPEB soliloquy.
That's right.
Yeah. But we were successful in getting that bill introduced.
Yes. In both houses.
Yes, in both houses with majority sponsors. So there's definitely discussion around that. Ultimately, there was some feedback on some things that could be amended on the bill. And we just ran out of time. The legislature just ran out of time. But that's one that I am looking forward to pushing and getting through.
So just as a reminder, OPEB is what our proposal is to create a reserve fund so that towns can put away reserves to deal with this growing liability. I think when some people look at this, two things, they think about it as a future problem, but it's really a today problem because they're funding today's retirees out of today's budget. And so if they would have had a reserve, they could have dealt with that better. But secondly, when you have a liability that is growing exponentially, 13, 14, 15, 18% on itself, it's going to become massive liability. And so not having a way to deal with that means that a taxpayer has to wake up one day and deal with it right head on. And no one's going to be able to afford that. So I think this is critical. I think legislators picked up on it pretty quick once we brought it forth. And again, I'm going to say almost exclusively NYS driven. There's nobody else talking about OPEB.
Yeah, I
but
went.
NYS.
I would agree with that. I mean, we're
really fun at cocktail parties because we'll talk about OPEB all day long if you want. But very important.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, really, it's essentially just a savings account, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just...
I don't know what the objection would be to it, but earlier or on another podcast we talked about, you would be surprised how much opposition common sense gets in Albany. It just happens, and it's unfortunate. But.
Yeah, there's a lot of competing interests. Yeah.
What else didn't get done that was important?
Well, what I considered was going to be the pièce de résistance of our legislative stuff this year was the rounding bill. So as we know, the penny is no longer in production, and this has presented some concerns, particularly in the realm of collecting taxes and not having exact change to provide to taxpayers. So a bill had gotten through the assembly. NYS took a look at it, noticed some improvements that could be made to make it consistent with existing law, and had suggested that this rounding bill take place at the point of the warrant, not at the point of collection. We didn't want tax collectors to be the one to say, you know what, you're paying in cash. We can just round this up. We can round that down, because statutorily they're required to collect the exact amount. And also it treats cash payers differently than others. Right. So Katie in our office had drafted these amendments that were great, were accepted. They had rounding take place at the point of the warrant. Both majority sponsors agreed to this. We thought it was going to go through. It was gaining traction. And then due to a procedural error in the legislature, it did not. And all I can think of is this is the Buffalo Bills of legislation, because, we got through all of these different hurdles. We shifted our game plan.
And the last 13 seconds went bad.
Yeah. On a bad call, on a procedural defect, right? So that is the Buffalo Bills of legislation for us this year.
Hopefully that changes this year.
Yeah. Another thing that didn't get done this year, but is definitely gaining traction, would be public notice reform.
Yes, that's huge. And I really thought we were going to get there, but I think we will get there this year coming up.
Yeah.
I think. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up next year. But we talk about this all the time. We believe it costs somewhere between $6 and $8 million. Towns, $6-8 million, and it's a very 19th century technology, and it was great when Ben Franklin was walking around, but it's not really friendly in the 21st century, both on efficiency and cost. And so this again is a common sense issue, it seems, but we just run out of time.
Yeah, just ran out of time on that one. I will say too, NYS is not the only organization who is frustrated with the lack of time, and even the legislature themselves, they're annoyed that they weren't able to get as many things through. But that one definitely gained traction this year, especially with the .gov mandate.
They could have stayed. That was an option, but chose not to.
I'm being nice to everybody. I'm choosing to be nice to everybody.
This is a good cop, bad cop situation. I'm like, you could have stayed. I know there's primaries going on, and there's quite a few primaries going on within the group, so they're all busy right now. What else are we missing that didn't get done this year? Well, of course, swap, right? Signature, one of our signature issues. Swap didn't get done. Critically important that we get that done. I don't think that we're losing momentum on it, but I think that folks got kind of like waylaid on different interests for this year. But I think we have to think about coming back with swap and repackaging it in a way that makes it easier for folks to understand what it actually does. This CHIPS-like formula program to allow towns to invest in their water and sewer or infrastructure. I'm just disappointed that didn't get done.
You and I share that in common. We have that in common. Yeah, that was a big disappointment. It's not that people aren't talking about it. No. And again, it seems like a common sense thing that who doesn't want clean water? Who doesn't support better sewer infrastructure?
Well, I think one misconception we have to work really hard against is that it somehow competes with or supplants the grant programs, and that's not the case at all. This is something that could actually complement the grant programs, and so I think we got some work to do there, but we'll get there.
Yeah, the two programs would work in concert, not in conflict.
Retiree salary cap. That one didn't get through, even when it was teed up perfectly, right, for them.
Yeah, I mean, should I bring up Tier 6 reform? Oh. Actually, I would call Tier 6 reform a mixed bag. Some of the proposals that were being talked about originally, a mixed bag for NYS. Some of the proposals that were being talked about originally were retroactive, right? It was Tier 6 reform dating back to, when was it reformed? Not 2012, but
16 years ago. So. 2011?
Yeah, maybe it was 2012. But yeah, it talked about having Tier 6 reform retroactive. And it had significantly higher contribution rate decreases. The version that made it in the final budget, I'm not saying it's not going to hurt municipal budgets. I'm not claiming that at all. However, compared to some of the numbers that were originally discussed, this one is a lot, it's not as heavy as a hit. So, for example, if you make over $125,000, your contribution rate goes down by 0.25%. Previously, people were talking about, 2%. So there are different ranges and decreases depending on what salary class you're in, but it's the numbers look a lot better.
And that's the biggest change to towns, right? I mean, so teachers got the 58 with 30, but that doesn't apply to towns. But the only thing that towns might get some impact on is the overtime for police officers, right? I think that went from 20 to 30,000. Yeah. So we thought it'd be a good idea to package the retiree cap, come up a little bit for folks from I forget how much.
$35,000 to $50,000.
And that did not get through. I thought that was the perfect opportunity for that.
Yeah, I mean, just part of a broader workforce development conversation. Also, going back to the Tier 6 too, I will say that I think that NYS was one of the driving voices in ensuring that Tier 6 reform wasn't as bad as it could have been. It wasn't the original proposals.
Right.
It was modified somewhat. So I think you really led the charge on that.
So that was one of the things that we played defense on, and that we actually had a pretty good defense on. I think that we prevented them from scoring the touchdown in the last 13 seconds. I think, but I think you're right. It was a good defensive win for us. And sometimes the defensive wins are wins, but they don't seem it as much. But it's because folks don't realize maybe how bad it could have been.
Yeah, but I mean, nobody was talking about the cost to local governments
No.
until you
Right.
put that op-ed
Right.
in. I think it was in the Times Union. You wrote that op-ed on the cost to local governments. Put out that statement. You were really good and vocal about that.
Well, we'll keep being vocal in the coming session. Anything else that you can think of that didn't get done?
That didn't.
Yeah.
That again.
That we were pushing for. I mean, I think those are the biggies.
Yeah.
Those are the biggies. But we still have an agenda that, and we'll get into the whole legislative conference and agenda making for us and the whole thing there. But what are some of the things on the agenda that we still are going to spend the summer talking to legislators about? If they want to hear it or not, we're visiting their district and we're going to talk about these issues. I know one of them is, this whole concept of county IDAs and pilots and giving away the town levy. That's an important one, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was describing it to somebody the other day as just saying, hey, I'm going to give away your money and not giving you any say in that. So I think we're going to take a slightly different strategy with this bill moving forward. But that is definitely going to be one of our priorities. I think some new ones that have not been on our priorities in the past, but there's a lot of discussion about it, include the harassing foilers. Towns spend a lot of time, money, resources responding to FOIL requests that are submitted just for the purposes of harassing people, really. And there's no mechanism in the law currently that allows them to address that. So that's something that I think is getting more momentum. Not that we're anti-transparency, obviously not, but there should be something in the law to kind of be like a circuit breaker, to be like, hey, you're submitting this for harassing purposes.
People tend to weaponize that process.
Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately. Yeah. So that would be a good one. I know, kind of in line with this pilot, giving away the levy. Part of what compounds the problem is that towns, unlike other local government units, really don't have a right to raise revenue any other way other than the levy. And so when you give away the levy, I've had folks on the county level in my tenure as a supervisor say, yeah, but think about all the great benefits this project brings. And I've asked, well, what are they? Well, more sales tax and more gas tax and gross receipts, and it goes on and on. But towns don't get that in their budget. And so, I think diversifying town revenues and bringing parity with towns with the other local government units where they can do that will be a conversation. I think that's going to be a long, difficult conversation that is not going to be easy. I don't anticipate, you can tell me how you see this playing out. I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon, but I think it's one of those things that we have to continue to talk about.
I also think, I've gotten so many requests to weigh in on special legislation on occupancy tax and hotel and motel tax. There's a lot of pieces of special legislation out there. Instead of doing it piecemeal, town by town, why not create a statewide scheme that allows for that?
Again, common sense. We rail against
Listen,
the enemies of common sense.
I have also never been accused of being practical or having common sense. So if I think it must be exceedingly obvious.
I think another issue that we probably will continue to talk about into the summer, maybe into next year, is the increased competitive bid threshold.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they increased it for the state as part of the bid, as part of the budget. It's just too low right now. The threshold is $20,000 for commodities and $35,000 for public works projects. That just it's too low, and municipalities are spending a lot of time and money putting things out to bid that should just be really simple purchases, especially with with inflation, right? The cost of goods have gone up so much. It's just what used to be a $5,000 purchase and could just be made pursuant to your procurement policy, all of a sudden has to be made pursuant to competitive bidding. And then also that has its own public notice requirements. You
Yeah.
have to put the bid in the newspaper.
Yes.
That belabors the process, and it's all linked. It all is interdependent.
It's all linked.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing about our agenda is there's these connections to every piece, I think. And so overall, it makes a compelling story. Just trying to make sure that the legislators see and understand those connections
Yeah.
is tough. And so that's kind of connected to piggybacking, which really got done, but not what we wanted.
Yeah, so piggybacking is set to expire June 30th, my birthday, of this year.
And piggybacking is?
Piggybacking is the ability of a municipality to not competitively bid an item if there's a contract available through another political subdivision that has gone through a competitive bidding-like process that a municipality can basically purchase off of. So it's nice, it's expedited. You don't have to use the competitive bidding process.
It's efficient.
Yeah, it just makes things easier. So that is set to expire at the end of this month, and we had wanted a longer extension. It is an exception to competitive bidding that a lot of municipalities use. The issue here was there was this outstanding litigation, the Maine Endwell School District versus Lynch, that raised some questions about the ability to use piggybacking in relation to public works projects. And the legislature seemed to be hesitant to extend piggybacking beyond more than originally was 3 years, then it was down to 1, until this litigation got resolved. It did get resolved, of course, at like the end of May, at which point it was too late to get anything through. So piggybacking was extended by 1 year. I think next session we are absolutely going to see some amendments to GML 103 sub 16 and clarifying piggybacking in public works projects. What that's going to look like, we'll see. It's definitely something that's on our radar that we will keep an eye on.
The last thing I want to bring up that I think is going to dominate conversations, and we had a podcast on this. I'm not sure if it's coming out after this podcast or before. Nick will have to tell us that. You will be seeing Ginsburg talk about the health insurance market and what's driving those costs, and very complex issue, a lot of issues. But he did lay out a number of things that the state has done to make it a lot worse, and things the state can do to really lower the cost. And so I think we'll be working hand in hand with his folks and kind of see what we can do to help lower the health insurance costs for our members. But this community rating thing is a problem that, he told me I learned this. He told me that during the Obamacare, what do you call that? The
ACA, Affordable Care Act?
Yes.
Yeah.
During that, they moved small group from 50 to 100. 48 states since have moved it back to 50 because it was so bad for so many people. He thinks it actually might be 49, but he knows for a fact 48. We are the last state, or the second to last state, that no one's even considering it here. But that is a huge issue for our members because 2/3 of our members are under 100 employees, as far as 100, being 100 or fewer. They're stuck in this community rate and they can't do anything. And so we have to do something this year to try to fix that for our members.
I mean, also with the 100 employee threshold too. I mean, that's it's related to not being able to get stop loss coverage, right? Basically, like reinsurance, and that prevents municipalities, that prevents towns from being able to join county self-insured plans, basically.
Yeah. I think it's going to be, watch the podcast. It's going to be an interesting podcast. The mandates, I think the stealthness of the mandates, which is, we can relate to mandates, right, as a local government, but on health insurance policies, and the taxes, he says like 25-30% of the policy cost, which is astonishing.
See, I'm like this. I don't know. I
Yeah,
guess I will watch this podcast.
This is a precursor. You have to watch the next one now, unless Nick puts it ahead of this one, which I don't think he will. But
yeah, Nick.
Yeah, Nick. So health insurance, I think, is going to dominate a lot of conversation of 2027, I think.
Yeah, and I think that that's a combination of legislative reform and, I know NYS is looking into non-legislative ways that we can help our members reduce health insurance costs. It's a multifaceted issue.
Yes. I guess I want to take a look back, because I think it was we just got done talking about what got done and what didn't. And, the theme here is, it seems like everybody just ran out of time, and that's unfortunate. But we had a successful year, and you did a lot of great things with our members, communication-wise. Lobby Day was very successful. Let's revisit Lobby Day for a moment, and then maybe let people know how next year they should get involved and come to Lobby Day. But that was held in, if I remember, March.
Lobby Day this year was held in the beginning of May.
It felt like March.
Yeah. I mean, so much has happened between the beginning of May and now.
I know. Seems so long ago.
But yeah, so this year we did things a little bit differently. And to make our Lobby Day not so focused, not so budget focused, we wanted to focus on some other areas of our legislative platform. We had it in the beginning of May. And it was just a day of back-to-back meetings. Our members seemed to enjoy it. They were able to meet with legislators who weren't necessarily their representatives, but were key, our key legislators over there. For example, Senator Cooney, he's the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. Assemblywoman Szilagyi, obviously the chair of the Assembly Local Government Committee. Senator Martinez, Senator Hinch, who's the chair of the Senate Local Government Committee. Senator Hinchy, who has been so instrumental with SWAP. Assemblymember Shimsky introduced so many bills this year that would be helpful to local government. She is the primary sponsor on the public notice modernization bill, and she has been wonderful to work with. So just all of these key legislators, NYS set up all of the meetings, and it was just going. It really was just back meetings, and we had staff take people around. You were with a bunch of people. I think a lot of meetings were standing room only, and maybe a little bit warm.
Yeah, very packed.
Yeah.
Yes. It's important, I think, for our members to take part in these programs, to get involved. I mean, getting folks here, I know, is sometimes a bit of a hassle, but for Lobby Day in particular, you send out alerts, ask folks to send in letters or emails or whatever. Just how important do you think that is to getting the legislators' attention?
Oh gosh, I think it's absolutely critical. I mean, obviously, NYOT's voice has some impact. We are only as strong as our members. And hearing from members directly is so important, and giving those personalized anecdotes, so stories about, hey, this water pipe burst, and we had to dig up a road that we just paved with CHIPS money, and we could have fixed this with $5,000, but because it was an emergency, it ended up costing $30,000, not to mention the cost of the road. But hearing those things directly from our members is so, so, so important. You speak differently about issues coming from being a town supervisor than I do. I don't have any experience being a public official, and the way that we talk about things is different. And I think it can be so much more impactful to talk from a place of experience, and to really flesh that out. I'm great at being like, subsection C needs to be amended, right?
This is why we make a good team. You have the brains and I have the experience. So
and the beauty.
Well, no, and you have the you're the good cop. I'm the buffoon that comes in and just says things.
But yeah, I cannot say enough. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of members reaching out to their representatives and talking about these issues. We talk to people all the time at our conferences when we're out and about, and they're like, yeah, we definitely want public notice reform. Like, it's delayed our projects. We definitely need this. Tell your representatives too.
So I deliver a lot of remarks around the state to different groups a lot. And I think the only applause line to date I've ever gotten was at the Clerks Association when I said, it's time to reform this public notice. And they're on it. They're with us. So we have to leverage that.
I'm
energy.
Just shocked that OPEB didn't get a standing ovation.
No standing ovation. So Lobby Day next year is not set yet, but it's usually in the spring.
Well,
somewhere.
This year, given that NYAT's annual meeting is in March this year, I think you and I have had cursory discussions about maybe changing the timing, maybe having it at the end of January, early February, in which case it would be very budget focused. And we'd love to hear from our members too. If they're like, if you think it should be at a certain time, let us know.
Well, look out for that because it's important that you come. We had a really good turnout. We like to build on that next year and just stuff those rooms even more and make those rooms even hotter. The other important change this year, our inaugural, it's a hard word to say for me, legislative conference is coming September 22nd and 23rd.
Yep.
And here in Albany, and I don't know if you want to talk about that, and the importance of folks coming as delegates.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things going on with the legislative conference. It is a day-and-a-half program. It starts on Tuesday, the 22nd. I believe the official kickoff, your official kickoff is at 12:30. This gives people time to drive in the morning. If you're coming from the great area of Western New York in Erie County, you have time to drive in the morning, come down from the North Country if you want to. Officially, it kicks off at 12:30. It's a day-and-a-half program of just panels and classes related to legislative priorities and policies that we are looking to change. There's also some more meat and potato classes, like how to better advocate for your town. A lot of towns need special legislation adopted. What's the best way to go about that? How do you get that done? The legislature, even we were joking about how I'm going to do a class that's basically, I'm a bill on Capitol Hill. Maybe I'll write a song, but just how even legislation gets through Albany. The budget process is such a weird, unique thing to New York and so different than any other bills getting passed. There's the committee process, there's calendar reads, there's all sorts of nuances. And I think just having that fundamental understanding, we will hear from legislators who have moved from town government to state government and what that transition was like, and how that impacts their policymaking at the state level. Classes on workforce development, case law updates, health insurance, water infrastructure, EMS.
I think you put together a very compelling conference, no question about it, for people who want to do two things in particular: learn and network and talk to. I think we have some legislators we're inviting, so there'll be some folks that people can talk to one-on-one. But the third thing that's really important is adopting our legislative agenda, which is new. So we used to do this at the annual meeting with our delegates there. We will need delegates here to adopt our legislative agenda.
Yeah, I was so excited about the programming that I completely and totally forgot about that.
It's all good.
Yeah, so as part of the bylaw amendments that were adopted at the annual meeting this year, our timing for setting NYAT's legislative priorities has changed in a really, really great way. So this is the conference at which our members will vote on what to include in NYAT's legislative priorities for 2027. In order to be eligible to vote, the town, as the member, needs to designate a delegate. There are sample resolutions available on the website on how to do that. It's a really easy process. And then those delegates, those representatives vote on what to include. We are the time to submit a proposed resolution to include in the legislative priorities is coming to a close pretty quickly. It's June 25th. So we're asking people to get your ideas for what to include on the legislative priorities by June 25th. Then the process is it goes to the resolutions committee, our internal committee that vets them and decides, which ones are eventually going to make it out for the full membership to vote on. So our legislative conference in September, the culmination of a day and a half of fantastic programming, will be voting on these legislative priorities. And I said it was a much improved timeline. The budget is discussed. The state budget discussions start in August. It is going to be so fantastic to be able to say, here are our set priorities for the budget.
I agree.
And just, laying that groundwork to make sure that our legislative priorities are talked about in August, September, October, and getting maybe some bills pre-filed so we can hit the ground running.
And that's the importance, having our voice heard in the planning stages as opposed to what used to happen. It will get approved in February of the legislative session that started in January. And then by the time we got everything together and out, it was almost March.
Yeah.
And the budget is pretty much, it's pretty much just down to negotiating the big points, right, at that point. So this will help us get into the game a lot earlier and play all 4 quarters, not just the 4th. So that's important. A lot of football analogy here because we all have the Bills on our minds. And I will do a little plug for our foundation, which we have for you golfers, we have a golf tournament on Monday the 21st here in Guilderland, New York, which is Albany County. Pine Haven is the course. And that's to raise money for NYMF, which gives scholarships, workforce development scholarships to our town members, to students to get involved or to better themselves or prepare themselves for workforce development issues in local government. So if you enjoy golf and if you can join us for that, look for information on our website for that as well. It's the foundation, NYMF, the New York Municipal Empowerment Foundation.
Also, to be clear, you don't need to be good at golf to enjoy the golf tournament.
No,
I am terrible. I whiff. I am a bad golfer. And I thought it was so much fun last year. I had a fantastic time.
It was a lot of fun. And you have a great picture on the advertisement now, you must see. So that's great. You're like
in my Bills attire, in my Bills golf gear.
Yeah. You're one of the models there. So other than that, what are we missing? Anything we didn't talk about? I think we hit on pretty much everything.
Yeah, we hit on a lot. There's just a lot going on. There's some amendments, proposed amendments with public officers law, not public officers law, with open meetings law and video conferencing. That there's a lot. I encourage people to take a look at the Legislative Resource Hub on our website, nytowns.org. I am in the process of putting together a nice comprehensive list of legislation that got passed both houses. So that should be up hopefully later this week, I think. And we're just going to make sure that our members are updated. I know sometimes it can be difficult to wade through all of the emails that come through. So I really encourage people to just get in the practice of just regularly going to our website and being like, oh, hey, let's see what's up. What's going on here? There's a lot of good information on there. There is a comprehensive summary of the seeker reforms. There are some new rules on drones. There's a pretty comprehensive summary on there. There's a nice, I think, 10-page summary of the budget that's on there. So there's a lot of information on there. So if we haven't covered it today, there's a lot of good stuff there.
You and your team have done a phenomenal job of getting our members the information they need timely, first of all, but comprehensively as well. And it's just, I think, one of the many, many member benefits that you don't pay for. It's in the membership fee, which is, it's just such a benefit. And you and your team do a great job at it. And like I say, great writer, got the brains driving the train here. And we'll get all this stuff across the finish line at some point. We just have to stay at it. I think that's the key.
Yeah, and I did just want to give a shout out to our 2 new employees who are part of the legislative team, and that's Paul Nelson, who I forget his official title, but Paul is incredible. He is amazing at talking to people. He is an extrovert and is just so he's just gone over and talked to so many legislators and is just like, oh, hi, I'm from NYS. He's great, making sure that our name really gets out there, talking to our members about legislative issues. I know he talked to a lot of people who attended the Plattsburgh roundtable that you held on public notice issues. So I definitely think our members can expect to hear more from Paul, and we encourage you to reach out to Paul and talk to him. You guys have stories to tell. We want to hear them. And Paul, his background is as a reporter. He tells a wonderful story, and he is just a really engaging person to talk to. And then we've got Megan Betke, who is doing our research. She's our legislative and policy analyst, research analyst, I think. She has a background in library sciences, so her research skills are fantastic, and I've already seen so much outstanding work. So I definitely think that you'll see a lot more come out from NIOT in the upcoming months in terms of white papers, just fact sheets, really putting together a nice comprehensive story to support our legislative priorities.
Yeah, I think the future is very bright. I think you got a great team, and with our members' involvement, I think we're going to be very, very effective next year. And so with that, I want to thank you all for watching. I think this has been another engaging episode. We'll have Sarah back here more. If you send an email and let us know that you want to see Sarah more, because I do ask for emails, comments, ideas, thoughts to nytowns.org. The email is actually info, right?
Yep.
At nytowns.org, info@nytowns.org. Give us your feedback and or any ideas on legislation. But we hope to see you at the Legislative Conference this September 22nd, 23rd here in Albany. And check out our next episode coming up in just a few weeks.